Yeah, so we're going to be playing SOMA because we watched Joseph Anderson's review of it from 8 years ago, and I wanted to replay it because it's a cool game. Physics manipulation in games like this are always kind of funny to me because it's like, how many objects do you think were picked up and just thrown about every single time? This is one of those things, right? Like, I wonder, like, if these are actual, like, things and they get the license to just throw them in a game, or if they're just completely made up ideas. Because this actually sounds kind of neat. Like people go swimming and then just like tendrils wrap around a bunch of people and just suck them underwater. I'd read that book. Japanimation, bigger than ever. Stunts versus CGI. Massive recoil, flawless execution 2. Or is that massive recoil 2, flawless execution? I don't know. Whenever titles do that weird thing where they put like a name in the title, but they also put like a number, and then they make a poster like this, it's just confusing to read. It's kind of funny how they put all these details for character on the front, and then in the back they have game ends with a surprise. It's very clear. I mean, this is one of those things that I think works on a character level in this opening, right? Is that there's a lot of very simple things you can interact with that give you details about his character, right? You know, like he's kind of like his apartment is kind of a mess. That chair's my fault. But, you know, there's like food all over the place, dishes aren't done. You know, there's a bunch of trash everywhere. He eats a lot of junk food, as we can see from the multiple pizza boxes. You know, he's got a phone call from somebody asking if he's coming into work today, and he forgot to send an email, which means he drafted it but forgot to send it. You know, it gives a lot of perspective on things.
Coming. Hope it's a good one.
Hello, birds. You'll be the last birds I ever see. Guess I managed to time my date well to just be home. I like the picture from the magazine type thing that foreshadows the ending. It is. It's a very neat detail. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people won't pay attention to.
Right. Watching TV gives me headaches now. Thank you, brain.
Man. That's one thing that makes me kind of reflect on if I went through an accident where I had, like, brain trauma and I had to, like, avoid technology for a long time. That's like, that would be hard because all I'd be able to do would basically be, I'd probably still have to work. So I'd probably work and then just lay around listening to music because there's like nothing. Well, there's not nothing, but like a lot of my hobbies are digital, right? So if I can't look at a screen, that would just, a lot of my hobbies would just disappear. In games like this, I always wish that you could like take a shit and the character would like comment on it. Like, we don't have to actually see it, but I always find it kind of funny whenever that appears. I'm a dirty Canadian. Help. It's going to be fun when we get to sort of the optional moral quandary parts of the game. Because I like talking about those situations. A piece of gum. Oh, no, that's the flash drive. Don't eat flash drives. Let's see. Damaged brain scan to produce computer model. Numerous tests conducted on model without risk. Perfected treatment is then applied on patient. Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting science, too. Like, it's not even just it's not even one of those sci-fi things that's just an excuse for the story to happen. It's like an actual interesting, like, concept, right, of being able to essentially, like, scan a brain, perform, like, a simulation of tests on that brain, and then depending on how the outcomes, like, turn out, you know, then they recommend therapy and stuff on that. You know, I always like that sort of thing where games blend like interesting real world applications of technology into their own sort of story that takes it kind of over the edge into like hard sci-fi and stuff. It's one of the things I enjoy a lot about this game in particular is the way it kind of meddles with like psychology, like real world psychology and science, but then takes it to that next level that you get with good sci-fi where it, you know, it tackles the concepts and, you know, what it means to do X, Y, or Z in a sci-fi setting with crazy technology, you know. We are very fortunate to get all the support, says Berg. Now we just need to get out of the limelight and actually do the work. That's probably not a good sign, like at the end of this article about you to say, now we just need to get out of the limelight and actually do the work. It's like, so have you not been doing a whole lot of it before? Doesn't really build confidence, you know. Honestly, it's amazing how much content they put into SOMA that you can read. Excellent world building. I agree. And it does it in a very I'd say it's a very balanced way, right? Because one problem I've had before we go in this room, I want to rant about it. But one problem I've had with some games is how they, just overload you on stuff that you can read in a game. Like Skyrim's an example of a game that I would say where the world building is very entertaining, but the pacing at which the world building can come to you is very all over the place. Like you'll have moments where, you'll loot something and there'll be a book in there, and you can read that book and get information about whatever the book's about, right? But at the same time, it's like a lot of those books are sort of largely unnecessary, for the game itself. They're just kind of extra lore bits. So it's a really weird sort of mix of like, how do you pace the world building you want to introduce on top of the stories that you're telling in the game? I mean, obviously, Skyrim's like a big game with a lot of stuff in it, so it's not gonna. It doesn't have to be as linear as, say, like Soma is. But I think Soma does a really good job of slowly drip feeding you information as you go, until you actually like start getting into heavier stuff with the. I forget what you call them, but like the memory sequences that the machines sort of have. This is the explosion room. It's a good thing it's locked. You don't want to let everybody into the explosion room. Here we go. Now we get into the... I like how...
This isn't funny.
I like how this game sort of drops you immediately into
I'm
the
not
shit.
supposed to put myself...
Really agree with Mahler from his Soma Amnesia series about just how much environmental storytelling you get just in the first 30 minutes. Yeah, I fully support that too. Like, I think the opening of this game is much better than Amnesia, just in terms of like how much information you gain in a way that makes sense diegetically, and also, just like it's such an efficient way to get you into the mind of the character, what his condition is, and where we're going before it drops you into the real shit. This is one of those things too that I really like about like, this is part of the reason why I really like Alien. I like Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, even Alien Resurrection, to an extent, is I like the sort of heavy industrial sci-fi stuff that you sometimes get, in sci-fi things. It's fun just to be in a big mechanical place that has interesting shit going on, I find that cool. This makes me think of the Spy Kids things where you just put almost like a popcorn, like a deflated popcorn bag in the microwave, and then like a second later you get McDonald's or something. This is one thing too that I appreciate in video games, is all the environmental storytelling that comes outside of the actual story that matters. With like first aid stuff in case of different things, how to use the doors, little cautionary things, little things that make it feel more real. This is one thing actually, isn't this like this is the base model, right, of like what the machines are supposed to be, right? But this is like the WoW one that turns into the creature that roams around like the other area. I never recognized it the first time, but it's very clearly that version. Actually, that's a good question. That's worth discussing. What's your favorite horror sort of environments to be in? Do you prefer like a dilapidated mechanical space, like a factory or a ship, or do you prefer something that's was like a high life area, like a museum or like a mansion or something, and now it's like fallen into disrepair, Like, what's your favorite horror environment? I'm more of like an industrial kind of horror guy myself. Like, I like being in environments like this, like dingy. Like I prefer like a dingy mechanical space like this, or Alien Isolation, where we're on like a ship or a space station or something, as opposed to being in like a spooky castle or like a forest or something like that. I like mechanical shit more than like classical stuff, I guess is the best way to put it. I'd probably go for like Resident Evil 3 vibes, enclosed city type thing. That's a fun environment to work in. Just like I said, like part of the fun I think of the Resident Evil games and of just zombie games in general is just watching how society in major populated areas just falls apart. This is one thing I appreciate about Frictional as well during this time period, is that they didn't do the whole, like, jump scare shit. It's like these are environmental sounds that mean something. It's not just an enemy goes boom, boom, boom in your face. It's like there's something back there, and you have to go there. So there's tension because you know you have to, like, go there. See, I'm wondering... Was that a real person? Because it looks a little reddish. Maybe it's the lighting is weird, but that looks more like blood than structure gel. I remember that there was one... It wasn't that. There's one particular spooky moment that I like. This is one of them too. It gave me flashbacks to Alien Isolation. But yeah, I like things like this where you don't actually see anything, but it's the indication that something's there. And I feel like Frictional's best horror is this shit, right? It's like inferring that there's something there, and you having to work around that knowledge that something is there, because your imagination will often do more work to make it more terrifying than what it actually is once you actually look at it. You know, just by virtue of them working with smaller budgets than some other games. There it is. That's the thing that I remembered, was like the spooky light moving across the way. This is one of those things that I wonder about, like, with the WoW and the structure gel stuff. If structure gel is sort of that super stuff that can basically keep you running, we kind of just would slowly morph into, like, cyborgs, like, over time, I would imagine. Before we go, I've often wondered, like, what their options were once the world kind of went to shit on the surface, because, I mean, you are in the ocean, right? So, there's tons of fish and things that you could interact with for resources, right? For, like, food and stuff, and you're surrounded by water that you could probably purify with the level of technology you have here, right? So, you technically could keep the human race going by just regular propagation and just, you know, having children and just keeping supplies flowing, right? Because, I mean, there's not that... I think there was like a grand total of, what, like 20 people down here? Like, maybe 30? Yeah, it's not a lot to go with, and, you know, some of them may not like each other, but at the end of the day, when the urges are coming, you got to go smash somewhere. And when it's the end of the human race as you know it, you know, it's probably time to do some Pound Town, if you know what I mean. I don't remember that idea being broached in the game at all, and I wonder about that. Superman is my favorite superhero. I reckon Man of Steel has actually aged better, although I loved it at the time it came out. Cavill basically does look like him in a way the new one doesn't, LeMayo. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the way the new one looks. I think Henry Cavill was probably the best guy to do it at the time, but just at this point I think he's just too old to do it. You know. And it was actually weird, like, I showed my wife the first 5 Superman movies, right? So it's like the first 4 movies with Christopher Reeve, and then Superman Returns. And I don't really understand the hate for Superman Returns after rewatching it, right? Like we loved the original Christopher Reeve one. We really enjoyed 2. It was not the Donner cut, but I remember the Donner cut being better, so that's here or there. We hated 3. We hated Superman 3, right? We hated it so much that we spent so much time with the new black guy hacker dude. I forget his name, but, like, he was so annoying. And the 4th one was but I really enjoyed Superman Returns, and I thought Brandon Routh had a really good chance to be Superman. It's just the movie just didn't do well enough, and it was just too expensive to make. Which was a shame, because he could have been the next Superman. He looked so much like Brandon Routh looked so much like Christopher Reeve. It was uncanny. Reckon that was the plan before the WoW started its machinations. Yeah, probably. Yeah. With them trying to repopulate the WoW was like, I'm just going to copy and paste and do my own thing. This is helpful. Then it's like, no, stop. Henry Cavill keeps getting cast in perfect roles with people who mishandle the character or story, and he leaves. I've not seen 3 or 4 of those ones. Yeah, Cavill needs a win, man. I really hope his like. I don't care about Warhammer 40k, but I would totally watch it if he's a fan of 40k and he is able to control the 40k on Amazon. I would love to watch him do something he cares about because he obviously cares deeply about what fans love, and it'd be just nice to see. I like how we're talking about this instead of like the horror game we're playing. But yeah. Superman Returns, I reckon, suffered from a shit script and stupid storylines like Lois being with Cyclops. I mean, that's the thing. I don't actually have a problem with that element, though, right? I could see how people would say that Superman was cucked in that, but I don't think that's... I think there's a decent story reason for that, right? Like, he fucks off for 5 years, and Lois moves on. I mean, like, like, if you're not married to a person, you're not gonna wait 5 years for them to come back. Right? Like, if you're not married, and if you don't have a stable relationship with them, right? You have no idea if Superman's going to come back to this planet, right? It's like, I know that they like Lois Lane with Superman, but I kind of liked where they went in Superman Returns, where she moved on, and Superman has to deal with the fact that she did move on. I think that's I don't think that's as bad of a plot element as some other people think, right? Was glad Brandon Ruth got a second chance playing the Atom in Arrowverse. I've not watched any of the live-action like TV shows for DC stuff, but it is kind of cool when they bring actors back like that. It is kind of neat. Guess I struggle since the best live-action version of Lois is the one from Smallville. Arrowverse really dropped in quality. First 2 seasons of Arrow and first season Flash are peak. Yeah, I've heard the earlier versions of those were good, but they just kind of went on too long. I tried Alien Isolation, but couldn't get very far. Really loved how they made the alien AI work. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think that Alien Isolation as a horror game actually did a really good blend of the different things horror games do. Because on the one hand, you start off relatively helpless against the alien, against the synths, the synthetics, right? But over time, you sort of accrue like more gear to help deal with them. But the alien is still the optimal threat. It is the threat that cannot be killed. It can simply be pushed away. And that's only for a limited time. I think Alien Isolation had a lot of good ideas it did really well. I think the game's a little too long, though. Like, it kind of starts to drop in terms of adding new things. Like, near, like, I think it took me, like, 14 hours to beat. But it's one of those games that I feel like would have benefited if they tightened it up a little bit. I enjoy playing the entire game. But there is a point where the game doesn't add anything new, and then it goes on for a couple extra hours, and then you're kind of like done. Most seasons of The Flash are insert speedster you think is a friend who is really the villain to try and recapture season 1. I'm just upset that they never managed to make a good like live action like Justice League series after Justice League and Justice League Unlimited existed. Right? That shit was perfect. Right? It would not be hard to adapt. I'm fed up of all these universes and shared worlds at this point. Just make films, not everything needs to be an interconnected world. My main dislike of the MCU now. Yeah. Well, just the MCU had a good formula for the first, 3 phases where it was just individual stories, that were focused on the character more so than world-breaking events. Then you had the world-breaking event be the Avengers film, right? And then they just repeat that. It started getting crazy in sort of a phase 3 where they were starting to, deal with each other's shit, like with, like Ragnarok and Civil War, kind of crossing paths of Avengers to deal with different things. But I do think that, this shared... I feel like the MCU has been a blessing and a curse at the same time, showing that it can be done, but at the same time, they became a victim of their own success, and now everyone's trying to copy them, but they're doing it like Marvel's doing it now, where it's just a shit show. It's like the intelligence is gone for how to orchestrate a proper cinematic universe. It's not that hard, right? It's really not that hard. Just have isolated movies that deal with specific threats in specific places that are on the lower scale of things. Then you have a bigger threat that brings everybody together. It's not that hard, right? If you're getting paid millions of dollars, it's not that hard to make that work. Man of Steel wasn't meant to kick off a film universe. It was a standalone film. I mean, I will give it that. It is a standalone film, and it's not one of those... There's so much good storytelling that could have happened, right? If people just took a minute to think about, okay, are we doing this correctly, or are we creating problems? That maybe would have got a sequel. I hated it with how much I did like Snyder's idea, and it all went downhill. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm kind of mixed on the whole Snyder verse thing because it's after seeing stuff about Rebel Moon and things like that, it's very clear that he is an idea guy that needs someone else to filter out the bullshit, right? Yeah, like he can't, like when he's given complete freedom and an unlimited budget to do what he wants, he makes shit, right? It's very obvious that he makes shit, right? When he's got like a guiding hand, I think he can do some interesting things. But anyway, I don't want to talk about other stuff outside the game. I feel like we've been doing that forever now. General Zod in that film is the best I've seen in any other content, animated or live action. Snyder is past his peak now. Okay, back to the game now. Yeah. I mean, I like General Zod in Man of Steel. I just think that the storytelling could have been better for both him and Superman as characters. You know, I hate puzzles like that in games. I just push buttons until it works most of the time. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, this is a simple puzzle. You know, it's like it's a simple puzzle that's just sort of like, okay, if you aren't sure how it works, you can figure it out in like 10 seconds, like I did, and redo it. You know, it's nothing crazy. I hate the puzzles that punish you for failure if you don't get it exactly right. Like one I go back to is the Dead Space 2 eye surgery puzzle. It's not really a puzzle, but it's basically if you don't get the needle just right, you basically die and have to redo that whole segment again. And it's very easy to fail that segment. It's very easy to fail it. I don't like that sort of like hard sort of if you fuck up the entire thing's screwed. Kind of wish the game did more with the objects you can pick up mechanically in the game. Other than opening drawers and moving stuff doesn't seem to be more than a cool thing to show they can do. Yeah, I wish there was more like physics manipulation that you could do in the game. Alright, good deal. Good deal. We ended a life, pretty much. Which seems to be the one thing I tend to do in this game whenever I play it. It's just... It's that thing of they will eventually realize that they're trapped. And so I think it's better for them to be shut off than to just go insane. Like some of these other constructs. I remember Stratsky being like one of my favorite characters, and it's just so sad to think about his story and where it ends up. Enjoyed the thing as well while you play through the game as you progress and go back to the main menu. Catherine becomes more visible until at the end you do. If you do, it's her face really clear. Yeah, I like that face because she's kind of one of the most pivotal characters in the game just because of how she kind of sort of gives us our goal of getting the Ark into space. I'm sorry. You're done for anyway. Well, now we've killed an actual person. Although she probably didn't have long with all the structure gel going through her, and she probably would have just sat there and suffered. She would have been alive, but in pain probably the whole time. I do like these sequences where you're like in a chair and you actually have to flip the buttons. It's not just a click one thing and then the game does it for you. I like that little extra interaction. One thing I don't like about the game, though, is how blurry it gets sometimes. It just blur effects all the time. I've noticed at times when it loads in a new area, the screen goes black for a few moments.
What was it said before? You're
That
from
might be it.
Toronto?
Yeah, I just went in for a brain scan and suddenly here I am.
That doesn't make any sense. How? Why would anyone bring a scan from Toronto?
You think that's strange? What if I tell you it was back in 2015?
Whoa.
Just little details like that I think are good for characterization of just them interacting and being human, as opposed to being, this is our objective, and now we must complete it. This is how we complete it. The interactions are nice until you realize how she manages him, not unlike Would You Kindly in BioShock. Yeah, it's... Unlike BioShock, it's for kind of a good reason. You know, she's trying to do some last-ditch effort of keeping some level of humanity alive in the cosmos, just for as long as possible.
Are you excited about the Ark? At first, I couldn't really see the point of it. But then I thought, why shouldn't we, right? I mean, if we are able to save even just a small piece of ourselves, why wouldn't we do that? So you are in favor then? I think it's really important we do this.
This is one thing too, right, that I've been thinking about as we've been talking about sort of Catherine and her manipulation is I think part of the reason it comes across as so manipulative in some places is because you can tell that, like from details we'll see later, you can tell that she's sort of, or not the only one, but like she's sort of the awkward type. Like she's socially awkward to a certain extent, so that probably makes all these interactions difficult for her in some ways. You know, especially when like the pressure's put on her, like later on in one scene that we'll get to when we get to it. You know, it's just one of those things where she's not the type of person that's good at convincing people to do stuff, right? It's just sort of she's doing her best with what she can in this crazy situation she's in. Yeah, I get you. I always more seen it as her trying not to make him think about what he really is, which might cause his mind to break. Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, too. It's, you know, it's one of those things where I feel like Simon is just in denial throughout the entirety of the game until the very end, where he's sort of forced to accept it as he's left alone, like in the bottom of the ocean. One of the many things Soma makes you think of, like, does Catherine still have a personality even though she's aware of her circumstances? That's a good point, yeah. I feel like she's one of those people that's very goal-oriented, and she understands that there's kind of no point to think about stuff outside of the goal, because that's only going to produce stress and get in the way of you accomplishing the goal. Like, it's sort of a very mechanical way to focus on what to do. And I think it fits her character, you know, because she's very... You know, this is humanity's last chance of any positivity coming out of this situation, right? Like, this is an ultimate doomed situation, right? So if humanity can exist in the Ark for thousands of years, then that's better than having no humans and no Ark, period, right? It's the best case scenario in a worst case scenario, effectively, and I think her personality feeds into that, where she focuses in on it, you know, and just desperately tries to compartmentalize the emotional aspect of, she knows how this works. She knows that getting everybody onto the Ark means that a version of herself is going to stay here, and it's going to be doomed, right? There's that element to it of, you do make it up to the stars, but you also get stuck where you are too. You know, I think that's probably one of the genius parts of the game of Soma. I know I'm kind of ranting about this, but like, it's like, one of the genius things about this is dealing with the idea of copying yourself and putting it in a better position to succeed, while you're like, it's that weird double thing where when you copy yourself, that is you, but you're still you as well. And so you have this weird justification of, how am I me, and how is that also me, and how is one me in a better position to succeed and progress things for the better versus the other that is sort of just stuck where it is, you know? I mean, we'll come to that later. We'll come to that later. Reckon this game does make you think about human soul and if each active person is really them and when they are copied. Yeah. I mean, all the copies that we see, like, some of them are sane, right? So I think there's an element to it where they are sort of perfectly copied, you know what I mean? But obviously some of them can't handle what's going on, so there's like a psychotic break, and then that psychotic break probably causes them to go insane, which also probably results in more copies of them that are also insane, that become sort of the creatures we see around, you know, doing different things. Based on what happens later, these people we're looking at have been manipulated into what they believe, eh? I don't know if there's a certain level of manipulation, right? But I think it is a thing where there's sort of that constant theme of denial throughout the game of, you know, like the version that has the best outcome in the copy situation feels good about the copying, right? But the version that stays back is always going to feel bad about the copying, right? So it's sort of that, it's sort of a scenario where you get both results every single time. And so that creates like interesting issues between characters of how they look at it. And then you have the different ways that people sort of go out across this complex. But I mean, as far as it being a manipulative thing, I don't think it's necessarily a manipulative thing as much as some people don't really think about the fact that there is going to be a part of you that is going to be unhappy that you are not on the Ark, right? I mean, my philosophy with it would have been, like, as a human, I would have tried to get a copy of me and all the people I cared about that are here like onto the Ark and into space. Let that be something, right? And then after that, I would try to figure out some way to stop the WoW and try to figure out some way to allow human life to continue down here, right? Like I would not completely give up the human, like the physical human aspect of it, on Earth. I would like to continue to fight for that, but at the same time, I understand the value in what we're doing with the Ark as well. Although I imagine there would be some moral quandaries with that, where, if a human life has to end to get us closer to getting the Ark into space, I feel like I would argue against sending the Ark at that point. But that's, really, it really just kind of comes down to what the situation is, and what I can do in that situation, This is why the game's interesting. It's fun to talk about these scenarios. Okay. Oh, here's the survey. I remember liking taking this survey. Welcome. If you are reading this, you have successfully entered the Ark. This survey is designed to give the developers a better understanding of your subjective experience and how to improve your well-being. Please continue with the survey. Now, this is one thing that I like to do, is I like to try to answer this in the moment of sort of how would we feel if we were in Simon's situation at this point. So it's kind of the thing where at this point in the story, this is kind of like how I would answer these sort of questions. How would you describe your physical condition? I'd say I'd probably feel alien at this point, because we've been able to go through water, we have a flashlight, and we can't see our physical hands, right? So it feels like me, but at the same time, I know it's not me, so it feels like I'm in another body, in a way. Alright, how would you describe your mental condition? See, this is the thing, is I imagine you would feel normal in this situation, because to me, consciousness is just sort of what you think you are, right? Your physical form doesn't really dictate that as much. So I'm kind of in the normal realm. In terms of because this is asking about mental condition, right? Like, I'm thinking about this from a mental perspective. Like, mentally, I would imagine I would feel the same. Physically, I would feel different just because I'm not me anymore, so things would shift. But mentally, I would feel normal. How would you describe your senses? I imagine they'd be different. See, this is the thing. This is the hard thing to answer in this game, is I'm not sure how you would feel. I imagine certain senses would be blocked, but also there might be a lacking, but you also might be more sensitive because of different... all of these answers are sort of valid. I guess that's what makes it interesting. So I imagine you would be lacking one of them, or lacking in some way, just because, robots can only have that feeling. The senses would only be impacted in very particular ways as a robot. Alright, how would you describe the sensation of your new condition? I would not say it's pleasant, but I also say I don't like it. I feel like disconcerting is probably the closest to how I would feel about it. Because if I was in a robot's body but felt like me, there's a certain level of freedom in that, because then you know that, hey, I'm not limited by the physical I would have as a human, right? If I'm a robot, if my leg gets ripped off, right, I might be in pain, but I can repair that, right? I can fix it, right? I can integrate with other technology and, become better or stronger or whatever, so it's like a thing where I feel disconcerted, but I wouldn't say it's any of these things. I think it's a doorway that could open up to horrible things, but also interesting things, for me as a person. But it definitely would feel weird, since everything's sort of constructed. Are you troubled by the fact that you are no longer strictly human? I feel like I'm kind of caught between no and yes, but I'm more in my previous experience. Because I feel like in this situation, I would miss the fact that I can't do human things. There might be the simulation of, my answers on this have changed probably because of who I was when I initially played the game and who I am now, right? So there's an element of me where, it just wouldn't feel the same, if I knew I was a robot but it looked real. Like holding my son is a good example of that, where it's I'm, if I'm holding him and he lays his head on me or something, there's a feeling there that I can't describe, but but I can feel it, and that's something that I imagine would be lost in this sort of realm. And so I think I would mourn I would be fine being in this, like, I would feel fine in this form, but I would mourn the fact that I'm not going to be able to experience some things the same. Do you like the fact they included these so you can ask those questions even though they don't impact anything? Yeah. Well, I think this game does a really good job of just making you think about shit. Like, it makes you think about things because it directly asks you questions and poses questions throughout. How do you perceive your new existence? Let's see, it's a direct continuation. I feel like it's like being born again in a way, because you've got like a new sort of perspective that you like are a robot, but you can do cool shit as a robot. Do you think this new existence will be a life worth living? Yes. I'd say maybe we can find a new sense of meaning in this. I don't think it has as much as the previous life. It's one of those weird things where I would like recontextualize the answers and then answer them in a different way. Like, I would put yes. It doesn't have as much as my previous life. I don't think it has less meaning overall, but I think that we can find a new sense of meaning because of the way we are, right? So it's like like my answer would be a weird blend of like the top three. Would you rather be removed from the project and accept death? I would say a hard maybe on this. I think death in this universe would be a lot easier to accept given different things. Fun thing to think about when you're playing first-person games. Do you play them with the thought of role-playing as yourself, or do you detach yourself? I always try to role-play sort of as myself in the game. You know, unless it's like a journey that's sort of scripted, that kind of pulls me out of it where I'm more involved for the story. But if it's a game where I can actively make choices, like I'd say like Skyrim or something, like I'm going to treat it like it's me as the character doing things. I'm the same, or maybe not me, but a version of me with defined morals that my character would follow. Speaking of Skyrim, how goes the commentary? I'm getting there on it. I've started doing a thing where I've started like reading, like doing the audio for the script. Like I've started reading the script for the video, even though the script isn't done yet. Just because I've got so much stuff that's already written, I may as well start recording it just so I can get that done. I had a thought to maybe break things down into sections and release them sort of faster. That way I can get something out there instead of waiting for this massive, like, probably 6 or 7 hour video to come out. But I don't really know how I feel about it yet. I said I was going to make 11 videos on the series. I'd like to stick to that, but it is one of those things where it's just kind of a slog to get through. I've completed the analysis for the levels, for the sound design, for the music, and for the stories. I'm working through the character sections now. I've got the main questline done and both sides of the Civil War done. I'm getting through the companions' characters and the analyzation of those characters, so it's just taking a while. There's just so much shit to cover in Skyrim that it takes forever to get through, right? Once I get through the story section in general, or the lore section in general, I should say, once I get done with the story and the characters, it'll be a lot easier for me to script things, because a lot of the stuff that we'll go over in the mechanics section and in the art section are going to be super easy to remember and go through because you encounter those things throughout the entire game, right? You know, whereas the story stuff and the character stuff is locked very much to a specific story with a specific set of characters in specific quest lines. So those things are very sort of slow to get through from point A to B, you know, from writing the script to recording it to editing it. So the story section's been the longest one I've been having trouble getting through, but it's just the only reason I have trouble is because it takes so long, right? Like just to give context for this, the atmosphere section of this video is going to be over an hour and a half long, just on the levels, the sound design, and the music. It's going to be about an hour and a half long, right, or roughly around there. The story section is going to be easy 2 hours, right, minimum, right? Just talking about the story, not even the characters specifically, but just the story of the lore section is going to be like 2 hours, like easy. Like I've made a bunch of charts and shit. This is going to be the most expansive analysis I think I've ever done, which is part of the reason I want to complete it as one single video, but also because I want to like keep this series sort of in format as it were. But yeah, that's what that's where the Skyrim commentary is. It's making headway, just very slowly. Thanks for the update. Looking forward to it. Just wish Skyrim kept my attention span long enough to actually complete any of the stories. Yeah, Skyrim's one of those weird games where it's got so much to do, but a lot of what you can do is rather simple. So, like, once you kind of do your fill of the game, it kind of, like, loses luster over time. I still think it's a good game. It's definitely worth the price. But it's one of those things that everything done in it is sort of done to an okay level. Like, there are a couple things that are really great, but a lot of it is just sort of, like, it functions, it's fun. That's basically it.
Can I pull the Omni tool out?
Wait. Okay, just be sure to plug me in again at some point.
You got it.
Good luck, Simon.
That's one thing I didn't think about. It must be really frightening to just turn yourself off and wait for someone else to turn your consciousness back on. Like, that's got to be freaky. You just be like, okay, please turn me back on. Like, you're trying not to sound desperate, but you got to be desperate to, like, please let my brain activity continue. Done everything in the Xbox 360 version, bought the Xbox One version when I upgraded 10 years ago, and I've got barely any of the achievements done. Every time I check, I ask, what have I been doing? I like she always reminds him to take her with him. Yeah, that's a neat detail. Yeah. Well, Skyrim's one of those games where the remasters and re-releases don't actually do much for the game, like, at all. Like, I think the Dark Souls 1 remaster is a good remaster of that game in terms of making the game function on PC. Otherwise, I would not tell you to get it, right? Like, if you're a PC player, it's way better than Prepare to Die. But, well, it's not way better, but it is better than Prepare to Cry, right? But just Prepare to Cry, Prepare to Die. But just it's one of those things. The Skyrim remasters have been uniquely terrible. They don't add anything worth having, like, period. That's where the Souls thing enters my mind. Like, if you're unplugged, you're essentially nothing until plugged back in. Yeah. It's very scary. Oh, man. Chris, I've stayed up all night. Seemed like a waste of sleep. I got the TV on in the background. The newscasters are covering the incoming comet like they were counting down for New Year's Eve. I know it's messed up wishing you were here with me. I suppose if anyone has a chance to survive this thing, it would be you guys below the waves. I hope you're able to go on if it's a life worth living. Looks like the shit's about to hit the fan. I better hit send before the shockwave reaches us. I'm proud of you, boy. Dad. It's those sort of moments that get to me, right? Especially now that I am a dad. It's like, fuck, man. I've thought about making a video about fatherhood in general and just kind of going over how it's changed me as a person. Remastered on PC gives you B as a jump option if you play with controller. Prepare to Cry didn't have that. Oh, that's helpful. Did B replace anything on console? I don't play the Souls series on console outside of Demon Souls, just because. Yeah, I got you. Fatherhood changed me as well, and not just for dad jokes. I was doing dad jokes before I was a dad. Oh wait, I misspoke. In Remastered, it lets you change from B to the left analog stick. Pretty sure Prepare to Die doesn't have that option. You have to do that B double tap thing. Oh yeah. That's one thing that's been really annoying about the Souls series in general is just the controls are not... They're not built for platforming, okay? Like, the simplest platforming you can handle is just dropping down from a thing. Jumping is horrendous. No more jumping. This is one thing, like, I'd be curious to see how Bloodborne performs on PC, like, not through emulation, but through, like, an actual, like, PC port. Because, I suck at console, and so playing games that are already hard on console just makes me hurt. Alright, now here's a section of the game I did not enjoy. I do not like this bit where you sneak around the enemy that you're not supposed to look at and they drop him in front of you, where you trigger him by looking at him and you can't change it. It's very annoying. It's something Bloodborne players complain about the most, I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. I feel like my opinion of Bloodborne would go up if I could play it on PC, because I'm comfortable with PC controls. Right? I'm not comfortable with console controls, just because I don't play anything on console. I like how the music and sound effects are being Tismy. Yeah, like I said, this might be my least favorite section of the game, is just... Actually, no, I wouldn't say least favorite's even a good way to word it. I would say this is the one section of the game that I actively dislike, just in terms of how it works, going through the ship and all this other crap. The real question, Vangaris, is where were you when you found out that the X button on PlayStation is actually called cross? You said the thing. I mean, given that they're all shapes, it makes sense for it to be called cross. It's just easier to say X. X rolls off the tongue much better than cross. Plus, the cross is confusing because you don't know if you're actually looking for like the religious symbol cross or the actual shape, just a line over another line. It's very confusing. Remnant 2. It's getting late here. Go take a nap, man. I didn't have as much fun with Remnant 2 as I thought I would. I really enjoyed Remnant 1. I played the crap out of it. The only thing I didn't like about Remnant was, well, two things I did not like about Remnant were the emphasis on spam, like spamming enemies at you at certain points, and the over-reliance on that, as well as the world being inconsistent. Like the world's not consistent in the way that it exists, right? Like if you need a specific boss in a specific world, you basically have to go and reload the world and hope you get the right one. That's one of the things I really hated about the original Remnant, is that there's no consistency there. All that chat about 360s or whatever just confuses me. I have no knowledge what it means. All I know is that the bigger the number, the better. That's all I know. I'm not that smart when it comes to PCs. Before I buy a PC, I might buy PC Building Simulator on my Xbox to learn. Oh, man. I don't think it's actually that hard to build a PC from everything I've seen about it. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do it where you don't blow up your PC, right? It's just a matter of don't screw it up. It's the biggest thing. It's just a lot of like research and making sure parts are compatible. I should really get a PC, considering the PC desk I have at home would actually let me get some of the games I want as well. I mean, I think it's definitely a worthwhile investment. It's a bit pricier than consoles, but it'll go a lot farther than consoles in my experience. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, just getting a PC that's within your budget that does what you want out of it. You know, the PC I got was $1,700, which is pretty pricey. You know, but I've enjoyed it basically since, I forget when I bought this PC. I think like 2021. Because I had a PC in 2019 that I had, but then I know I replaced it with something else. Evacuation successful. Mr. Akers, I'm happy to inform you that your crew has safely arrived at Theta. Let me know when you are ready to move and I'll send a transport. Peter Strosky. He's such a ray of sunshine in this bleak abyss of a situation. So sad. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Mr. Akers. Don't hesitate to ask if you want to be relocated to Theta. I love Strosky so much. I feel so bad for what's going to happen. I think we'll just stick with what happened. But we know it's a person, right? We know it's a person in a robot. Like a copy of them in the robot. You just continue. Not like we've bothered with morals. Yeah. My philosophy on doing this stuff here is that, like, you know, like this robot, as far as I can tell, is autonomous, right? Like it's not a copy of a person in there. It's just a basic functionality of like a robot in it. That's an actual person, and my belief is that eventually they will catch on that something is wrong. Eventually they're going to die. You know, they're going to realize what's going on. So I view giving them death as sort of a release of sorts from that suffering. Right, ending it now, as opposed to making them suffer over a long period of time by going just insane and just existing, right? So that's kind of my philosophy on it, is I think death is better for them than to have them slowly uncover everything and then go insane.
You put in a good word for me?
Hello?
Who is that? Mark?
No, we haven't met before.
Is this Mark?
I think we're safe.
Oh, I was so worried something had gone wrong.
What's your name?
Robin Bass. Theta Field Service Technician.
Nice to meet you, Robin. How did you get here?
I got scanned, like the others. And then I killed myself. At least I think so. I can't remember that part.
How does that work? Did dying get you into the Ark?
Wow, you're definitely not from Theta. Let me guess, Omicron? Wasn't sure Catherine would be able to scan you guys. You're lucky. There was a lot of talk about this at Theta. The idea is, when you're activated in the Ark, there's basically two of you, right? One human, one living scan in the Ark. You don't want your copy to survive you. You yourself want to survive on the Ark. If the human you dies before the scan is initiated, or closely after, you yourself would live on in the Ark. Amazing, right?
Sort of amazing how they thought that in some kind of weird, like... Because it's one of those things that it's inherently illogical, but under the stress of being the last humans on Earth, I can understand how some people might have psychotic breaks where they think this is the best way to move forward, even though it's not technically them moving forward, because it's always a copy and paste. You know, it's not a... You know, it's not a transfer, right? We know this. It's not a transfer, it's a copy and paste. So the human you commits suicide, and then the digital version of you, like the digital version of you continues as if you never committed suicide, right? So it's one of the weirder parts of this story that I think is interesting to talk about because of all the different pathways that result from someone copying themselves and reappearing like somewhere else in a different form, right? You know, like the old Simon Jarrett died in Toronto years ago, but this one just suddenly wakes up immediately after the brain scan like nothing happened because it's copy and paste.
Did Catherine put you up to this? Killing yourself?
Catherine Chun? No. I don't think you understand. She just did scans and put them into the Ark. I hope I get to meet her soon so I can apologize. She always got into trouble with Strohmeyer when someone killed themselves.
I think she's okay with it.
Where is everyone? I thought there would be like 40 or 50 people here.
I don't know. I'll let you know if I see anyone. Robin, I'm not sure how to say this.
What?
This is
Yeah?
pretty amazing, right? I mean, the Ark.
Yeah, it's great. Catherine and the guys have really pulled through. They saved us all.
See you later.
Will do.
Oh, see, that's the part of this that gets me, right, is, you know, she thinks she's on the Ark, but we know that, but she thinks she's on the Ark, but she also thinks she's on the Ark and completely alone. So this is that situation where, I mean, kind of like all the other situations where we deal with, like, humans that have the option to, like, live or die, is I'm always probably going to side with the death because my philosophy, well, not my philosophy, my thought process is they will eventually figure out that they are not on the Ark. They will eventually figure things out, as far as I can tell. And when that happens, they'll have probably a psychotic break and go insane, or they will sort of just go on existing in a hellscape that they can't turn off. Right? I don't know, you know, I don't know where the sort of line is, right? Because it's kind of blurred, like what kind of stress level lets someone sort of short circuit themselves, as we'll see later on, you know, at the end of the game. So it's one of those things where I usually end up siding with, I think we're better off to sort of kill them, because I think a quick, sudden death, I say death, but this is really just shutting them down, right? I think a quick, sudden death is more advantageous for them in the long run than having a long existence where you find out the truth and realize you're trapped underwater, like alone, in this case, right? That's sort of my philosophy on it. It's kind of harsh, but, you know, this is how I think things are. And we're about to say goodbye to Robin here.
Where did
I'm sorry, Robin. I'd rather be dead and free than alive and trapped. Yeah, the more I look at these photos, the more it just comes across as like this was Robin trying to cope with sort of like the situation at hand and sort of how she's going to, you know, like these were all the like a lot of these like real life pictures were stuff of things that were in the real world, and all this stuff is, you know, her and all of her friends in the Ark enjoying being on the Ark, you know, like they're at the beach playing, or, you know, like they're walking around the woods waving at each other, you know, one person's in a boat. You know, like this is sort of her way of trying to cope with the fact that so much is, you know, wrong, essentially. Dear friends, when you read this, I will have entered the Ark. As I've explained, this is accomplished by ceasing to live as your scan is being completed. To not frighten Catherine, I will do this in secret by folding cyanide salts into chewing gum and placing it in my mouth before seeing her. When I hear her announce completion, I will bite down, quickly causing my own demise. When you discover the truth behind my death, know there's no tragedy to mourn, for I am victorious. I advise you all to do the same and join me inside the Ark. I mean, this is the kind of thing where if I was in this situation, like just based on the context of what it sounds like, I would not be giving in to like this sort of thing, right? Like I believe that the continuity of the you that would be in the Ark is important, but at the same time, you should not forsake the physical you that also exists. You know, it's like, because to me anyway, the Ark is sort of another version of you that can go out into space and exist, right? But the human you is still important to the human you, right? And we see that sort of as the game goes on and as we see different people interact with that sort of idea. You know, it's like your continuity isn't as important as the existence of where you are. And since you're existing in a digital space and a physical space, you then have to deal with the fact that the digital you is basically good to go, right? They can handle whatever they're doing. You, however, are still in this station, still dealing with real physical threats and like physical needs and desires and stuff like that. And I don't know, I'd never be able to go that far and like kill myself and say, oh, I'll survive in the Ark. It's basically good. You know, it's not one of those things that I'd want to think about. Because frankly, I'm a fighter. I'm not a black pillar that decides to kill themselves. There's some undies. Ooh, spooky undies. See if she left behind any pantaloons. W and Karis W. We're taking the panties with us.
Strasky, come in. I need help in the lab, the scan room.
What happened?
Conrad killed himself after the scan.
Jesus, how?
Maser tool? What should I do?
I'm gonna need to tell Strohmeyer.
No, please! I'm so close. Strohmeyer's gonna shut down the Ark project. It's not my fault people keep killing themselves.
Catherine, what are you gonna do? It's not like you can sneak a 300-pound body out of the lab.
Little fatty came in.
Catherine, are you okay?
Not even close.
I always feel bad to... out of all the characters in this story, I feel like Catherine is arguably one of the most like sympathetic, given the pressure she was under. Right? She created something that could allow humanity to continue in space for thousands of years. And then people start killing themselves in a false belief that that's the best way to deal with this. You know, and so you end up with this thing where they're dying, she's getting blamed for it when, you know, it's not her fault.
Okay, that's it.
Wow, that was fun.
That's a relief. Still figuring this out, so...
This freaky. So many lights. What do we do now?
Paul and I are going to run tests for a week or so, and then we'll work out a roadmap to your recovery.
Well, I feel excited. Can't wait to get back to the living.
Oh man, he says that, and then a month later he's dead. Like, oh, it's a much more tragic sort of version of he was 3 days away from retirement, you know. But damn.
We've worked everything out. Everything is legal. Vouched for by Dr. Peak and Professor Way.
Oh, that's great news.
No big change in medication. You'll be taking an aspirin every morning, but that's about it. Paul worked out a diet with some variations you should try out. You can continue doing physical therapy. Also, there's some extra cardio training every other day.
Okay, getting complicated.
Don't worry, it's really not. We're going to keep an eye on you every week, so we'll be able to adjust the plan if needed.
Man, it's like there was so much optimism, then it gets complicated, and then we know what happens.
The model was sound. It should have worked.
It's not your fault, David.
I really wish things had turned out differently.
Yeah, me too.
I was supposed to save you.
Hey, you got my brain on file. Maybe you can put it to some use.
Yeah, who knows? You'd be okay with that? Using it for my research?
Sure. It's like a part of me lives on or something. Like a donated organ. You know what sucks about dying?
What?
The crash. Everything up till now. The brain damage. You guys, everything. It's made my life so much more real. I started thinking about all the things I was going to do. I'd never been more excited to be alive. All that hope. Wasted.
Yeah, I mean it's that quintessential thing, right? That people tell you all the time, that when you're close to death, you feel the most alive. You know, it's like it's kind of the playing on that theme of how complacent we get just in our existence. You know, like we get so used to life being the way it is that when we get close to death, we genuinely reconsider everything. You didn't have to describe it so sadly. Well, I mean, given his condition, and how bad things were going, and the fact that he dies the next, like pretty much that same day, right? Like, that's the last one. He dies that day, right? That's just him trying to make peace with it, I guess, the best that he can. And this is one thing, too, right? Like, I've had a health scare where I won't say recently. It was like a couple years ago, but it was like a year ago. But I had a health scare where I genuinely thought I was going to die. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And I thought, oh my God, what happens if I die? And I started immediately thinking of, like, what's my wife going to do? What's my son going to do? Like, what's going to happen? And that kind of shit, I think, really wakes you up to, like, holy shit. Like, there's so much that you don't think about until you think you're going to die. Now I've never had, like, a crazy, like, extreme experience. Like, I had, like, a bad case of, like, not a bad case. I had, like, a little bit of, like, food poisoning or something that made me just start freaking out and, like, shaking uncontrollably. It was extremely minor at the end of the day, but people that, like, get in a car crash where they almost die, or people that, get, like, shot or stabbed or something, and they're sitting there bleeding out, but they somehow live. I can only imagine what goes through your mind during those moments of feeling like you're going to die, whether you know it or not, like feeling that your life is slipping away in one way or another. And just that, they say your life flashes before your eyes, before you die, right? And I like to think that's true because we think so much about sort of what we have in life to take care of on a day-to-day basis, but we really care about it at its greatest sort of intensity when we know that we can't take care of it. That, along with a lot of other things, are the reason why I like this game's story so much, is that there's so much to think about from this game, right? And this game makes you confront uncomfortable ideas, which I think is sort of maybe not the greatest aspect of the game, but definitely one of the better ones. Is just how just how this game manages to introduce so many different ideas and themes to discuss, with other people that have played the game, or just for you as the individual to think about, just as time goes on and as more and more sort of happens. There's so much in this game that's worth talking about because it makes you think about other people's interactions in general, as well as your own interactions, with other people and how your life... It sort of makes you think about how your life matters and how it matters to you and how it matters to other people around you. You know, and it's that weird... It's just weird. It's weird and interesting, and that's part of the reason why I love this game. Yeah, that has to be extremely mortifying, especially when it feels so hopeless. Like, waiting for help to come and clinging for life. Yeah. You know, just that you know... Hopelessness really makes you reevaluate your priorities, right? I mean, and even if you're not hopeless necessarily, but if like when death is like when you feel like death is coming, your opinions on a lot of things will change, like in a few short moments. Look at Mr. Juan. We have one chance at this. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. LeMayo, I hate that Juan joke got me. Well, I got you once. I'm just a knee slapper every day. We are very proud of our son, who do really well. He be master engineer. We have one chance to get this right. A thing opened. The spooktisms are listening. Alright, here we go. So, scan room. Alice. Let's trick this guy. Let's trick the poor fool.
That wasn't so bad. Stromar really got me worked up, bastard.
Well, that's what you get for listening to his stories.
I guess I had it coming.
About Stromer. He said he needed a new site for ASAP. What should I tell him?
It's alright. I can talk to him.
Wait, didn't Sean just tell you to take it easy? Don't worry, I'm not gonna tell anyone.
I do feel hungover. Okay. It's 1729 over 42, 12 over 407. Got it?
Yeah, I got it. I'm sorry, Mr. Wong. Brandon. Goodbye.
What do you mean? No, wait.
That's enough. We got what we need.
Is that what we are? Simulations?
Yeah, but it shouldn't make any difference. You're still you. I'm not sure what to do with the data. You decide.
Oh, here we go. We probably should erase it just so there's no chance of his continuity appearing elsewhere because of the WoW stuff. Wow, that's fucked up. Not even a gentle goodbye. I know, it's very... Yeah. I mean, it kind of fits within Catherine's character, though. She's very sort of get the job done and kind of emotionless at times, but that's not because she doesn't care, right? Like, it's because she's sort of socially awkward to sort of the extreme, and she doesn't know how to deal with it, so she kind of shuts down whenever that stuff happens. But we're going to erase it and get rid of him. We're not going to let the scan continue.
Rest in peace, Brandon.
Rip Brandon. One thing I always love about like industrial sort of horror games is the atmospheric sounds of just the base crumbling and dealing with different shit. Like, you can't tell whether the creaks and groans are from something moving around or if it's just the station or the ship or the base, like, shifting just because. This playthrough is so skibbity fingers. I feel like Ohio couldn't even phantom tax this. I don't understand half of what you just said. Let's take this attitude survey, see how we're doing. Recently, it was decided that the ARC project would become Pathos 2's last official commitment. The staff have been urged to carry on with their duties despite Earth's catastrophic condition. I think the ARC project is the most logical step towards saving I think the ARC project is the most logical step towards saving mankind, and that we should spend as much time and resources as needed to complete it. I would agree, but I would not strongly agree just because they're... I mean, again, I think the ARC is important, but our own survival as well still matters. Like, there was still potential for humanity to continue existing in some form physically beyond, like, copies of us just floating in space. To embark, every passenger needs to be flushed with electromagnetism using a pilot seat. These scanning sessions are known to cause nausea and headaches, sometimes lasting up to 3 days. I think temporary physical discomfort, no matter how severe, is a small price to save mankind. Strongly agree. It doesn't matter if you go through a little bit of pain to save humanity. The Ark is built to fit a Ranger Mark 7 probe, meaning it could be shot into space with the Omega space gun and technically survive for thousands of years, living off the light from our sun and distant stars. I think the Ark should leave Earth behind and be launched into space. Yes. I mean, I would agree with it, but I would say if we end up sacrificing our lives in order to do that, there is sort of an argument to be had that, you know, humanity does die. We just continue to exist in a small pod of what we think of ourselves. The digitalization of humanity is an opportunity to make a quantum leap in our own evolution. The people inside the Ark will out of necessity be generated from existing genetic code, but could be altered to allow for cosmetic changes, ease aging, and even prevent death. I think we are at risk of losing our humanity if we were to rid ourselves of disease and our mortality. I strongly agree with that. The further we get away from understanding our own limitations, the closer we become to losing our sense of humanity. There are only 58 people left alive to be stored inside the Ark. A way to diversify and expand the population would be to introduce artificial intelligences that would be in every way appear to be human, but with childlike and naive sensibilities. As we continue to explore the nature of intelligence, we may find a way to make them smarter in the future. I think even an inferior group of artificial people would benefit our society. I'd probably agree, considering if they are smart enough to become sort of intelligent later on, I think it would be beneficial in this scenario. Right, so I wouldn't strongly agree, but I would agree. Thank you for participating. This is how your colleagues voted. Ark approval. I am almost in the minority here. Eternity among the stars. Lower. Inferior companions. I'm in the majority there. Pain for grief. Almost in the majority. Let's see, artificial evolution, I am in sort of the mid-range. It's always neat seeing those little surveys and stuff and what they mean. I should have brought that shank that Mr. Wan had. I had one chance to shank this guy, and I missed it. All that yummy goop on the ground, and you're not going to taste test it for us. I bet it tastes of bacon and poo. If you put structure gel on a jellyfish, does it become a structure jellyfish? Or does it just become a double jelly? I like double jelly. I think that sounds cool. Oh, yeah. Isn't this where Strosky dies?
It's fucking open! And nobody's answering to anything! What kind of cold-hearted motherfuckers would just leave us out here to die?
Don't you get it? They're dead. They're all dead.
Yeah. You're right.
How can you be so calm about this shit? We are dying!
How much air have you guys got?
20 minutes. Tops.
Hey, I'm in red. Seconds away before the CO2 gets me.
Stresky?
Why wait, right? I'm the master of my own fate.
Wait, Stress, what are you doing?
And there's the end of that one guy everybody appreciated. At least I appreciated. He worked so hard and tried to be so cheerful, and just in the end, it all fell apart. You need a good tragedy in most things. I like how they don't like force you to interact with a mirror at any point, but they put several of them throughout the game that you can interact with, just to kind of help sort of highlight the fact that we are a robot. Here we go. It's time to copy and paste ourselves into that body.
This should be over soon.
It's like having your picture taken.
But with the most expensive camera in the world.
You know, Indian stock photos would steal their souls.
In this case, they'd be right.
There must be something wrong. Can't you run a diagnosis or something?
What was that?
No, it's just...
Why was it still talking?
It's the same like before.
Catherine, why was he still talking?
That's how it works, you know that.
What do you mean?
You know it's not magic. You were copied. The sleeping Simon in the seat was copied, and now you are here, just like Simon lived on in Toronto.
God damn you, Kath. 2 Simons? There can't be 2 Simons.
What did you think would happen?
That you were gonna take my mind and put it into another body, like a brain transplant.
I'm sorry, it wouldn't work that way.
You realize how messed up this is?
Please, I didn't mean to upset you.
How did you expect me to react to this shit?
Please stop.
You're fucking disgusting. What's gonna happen to him?
He'll sleep for a while, a few days.
And then what? Wake up in this fucking nightmare again? All alone? So cruel.
Well, what do you want me to do with him? Make friends? Let him know that we have to leave him behind when we go into the abyss?
What if he didn't need to wake up?
You'd do that?
I don't know. Maybe.
There. I set it up for you. Hit the switch if you want to drain his battery. He'll die within a minute. I'd rather not stay plugged in any longer.
I really like that interaction, and I think it says a lot about Catherine that she's just sort of like wilting in front of Simon, who's trying not to get it. He just can't comprehend it, even though he really needs to and get over it, while she completely understands the context of what's going on. And now we have this. Our previous self just chilling here. And this is one thing, if this one truly is trapped here, then, you know, I'd rather he be trapped here. I'd rather he not be trapped here, and that this is just sort of the end of the line for him. Because, again, like most of these situations, I feel like death is a better way to go, where you just shut off and that's it, rather than having these creatures break in, tear him apart, and then have him go insane or something like that. Right? I think it's better if his continuity just stops here, and he doesn't have any more suffering on top of this. It's essentially the same answer I've given every single time, but that's basically it. Just the answer is death. Let the previous versions die. Because at this point, there's nothing he can really do on his own besides just wander around, go insane, and become another WoW creature for us to deal with in the future if we ever came back. So we're saying goodbye. All right, but yeah, one thing I was kind of curious about actually on the way down here that I was starting to think about is if we can transfer our consciousnesses like into robots, right? If we can do that, it makes me wonder if there's like a consideration of, you know, if we don't have to have physical bodies anymore, instead of putting us into the Ark, couldn't we technically create like robot versions of ourselves that could go back on land to some capacity? Like, I'm curious of that now. Like, if that would have been a possibility to, like, check out the surface world. Because the surface world, I would assume... I don't remember the exact details of how the surface world was destroyed. I don't know if the atmosphere, like, was completely obliterated by the comet and oxygen. Like, I don't know if the issues were oxygen, or if the surface world was utterly annihilated, like, via destruction, or if it's something else. But I'm just wondering, like, would there be a capacity to take all of our collective consciousnesses across everybody at Pathos 2 and saved, like in the WoW stuff, and like load them into robots that can like go up to the surface and do shit on the surface, you know? There's a lot of questions that I think come from this game that I think are interesting, but other ones that kind of fly in the face of the whole point of it as well. I still think we should strap buzzsaws and other power tools to our limbs so we can create like a mech version of Simon. That'd be pretty fun. I think I remember this section being a little iffy because on the one hand the atmosphere is great, but the mechanics of actually getting from A to B are kind of boring. It's kind of like just run and keep running. This is a weird sort of combination of the Borg, but like the Borg are trying to keep you alive as opposed to take you over and use you for resources. And so, like, can you imagine like trying to die, but the WoW just keeps you living perpetually? Thanks for all your help, Lindwall. May humanity rest in peace.
Would you stay with me, please?
Sure.
It won't be long now. Just... please, just stay. crazy thing this was. Life. At least I won't have to turn 30. Hooray! Wish I could have died at home with my friends. You ever been to Greenland? It's very beautiful. Well, at least when you get out of the city. Nanook is busy, and yes, there's like 12 million people trying to get around, but it's a great place. Or rather, it was a great place before the comet ended it all. You know what? I prefer it this way. I liked Pathos. Liked my colleagues. Ian, Nick, Jasper, even Catherine. People thought she was weird because she was quiet, but she was cool. Simon, you still there?
I'm here, Sarah.
Don't let him die, okay? Send them out there. To the stars.
See, the Ark was running, so I wonder what that entails. Like, with the Ark running, is the simulation already, like, I assume the simulation's already begun, and it's on day 312 of it all. But again, I'm not quite sure exactly how you, like if they started running it immediately, and this is just sort of where we're at, like ever since the scans began. Like, do the scans begin in stasis and they only start up when? Do they only start up whenever? I don't know. Just I have questions about like when the WoW officially started the simulation, and what instigated the beginning of that. This is the one thing, right? Like it's hard to predict like how long a player will take to get from A to B. So sometimes they put dialogue there, but you don't want to miss dialogue. So sometimes I just have to stop because some games are really incompetent about how they place dialogue versus the triggers for triggering new dialogue. And it's like, I want to be careful. I don't want to miss things.
What the hell is that?
The more I think about Soma's endings, the more I really enjoy them. I mean, it technically has two endings within the same ending, which is kind of weird. It's like you finally get to see both versions. Like, but yeah, basically the thing I was going to say was, it's interesting in this game how each version of Simon kind of goes through a different process when it comes to the transfer of oneself into something else, right? Because you basically have 4 Simons by the end of the game, right? I want to rant about this before we go outside. Like, you basically have 4 Simons in the game. You have Simon 1, that was the real human. You have Simon 2, which woke up in Pathos 2. And then Simon 3 when we transferred into the deep dive suit. And then version 4 is going to be the one on the Ark, right? So each time that we have that copy, right? Because it's not a transfer, but it's like that copy, right? Each time that we have that, the context of what we see is different, right? The first scan is an immediate, we just wake up in a new environment. We still think we're Simon, right? The second one, we actually have to, like when we do the first one, it's immediate. We have no idea what's going on. We have no idea why things are happening the way they are. We don't understand the mechanics of how it works, right? So that first transfer, it feels like we just close our eyes and open them again. The second time that we deal with that copy and paste, we actually have to deal with that when we go from one suit to the heavy dive suit, right? And we hear that other Simon, like, questioning why he's not in the other body when he technically is in the other body, and we're in, like, version 3, right? And then, like, at the end of the game, we get a proper sort of acknowledgement of what's going on. It's like the game has sort of that narrative of Simon not understanding, purposely not understanding, not trying to think about the concept that when you do that copy, one of you moves on, one of you progresses down this story, the other just gets stuck, and has their own story. The stories diverge at that point. it's gonna, and it's sort of the recurring theme throughout the game that Simon's not willing to comprehend the fact that there is a version of himself that he left behind. And each time his reaction gets worse and worse and worse because he just keeps denying how this system works. And I think this ending that we're going to get to here is a perfect encapsulation of sort of his denial and sort of how that feeds into the ending that happens, right? Where you have sort of the, you have him, we do get on the Ark, but at the same time, we're left behind as well. And it's an interesting discussion to think of, like, how each character would deal with that, right? Like, I think Catherine would take solace in the fact that, that the Ark made it to space, right? Like, if she didn't short circuit in the next scene we're going to see, like, her going in, I feel like she'd be glad that we went to space. I feel like we'd be really, like, she'd be very positive about it. Simon, on the other hand, would be clearly fucked up about it and be, like, very pissed off about it. But I feel like she would have to convince him of the way the system works, right? And Simon's, the ending is sort of tragic in the way that it is, where Simon just refuses to understand. And in the last moments, of him freaking out about something he should totally understand at this point, that's the thing that causes Catherine to short circuit and basically die. And then we get Simon just being alone down, like Simon 3 is left alone down here with no real way to end his continuity, besides like just running outside and just losing power, right? Which we don't know how long that takes. So there are so many interesting questions of what would happen next, sort of a thing that comes up during the parts of this ending. I wanted to kind of get this rant out of the way before the endings happen, because I kind of want to enjoy the endings as they are, just because I really like Soma's story and I really like the ending.
Oh, I'll never get used to that.
Guess you won't have to. Not after this is over.
Right. Have a seat.
You can also tell in her voice there's that little bit of like, I'm holding something back.
Okay, ready when you are. Just hit the button and we're off.
But we need to transfer our minds to the Ark.
We also need to make sure it launches at all, so I tied them to a single switch. Just push the button and we're off.
Here we go.
Here we go. No turning back.
Thank you, Simon.
Don't mention it.
It's an amazing thing you did. And I want you to know I appreciate it.
Oh, she's laying it on, being like, thanks, just trying to help ease him into the realization that he'll have to confront.
20 seconds.
What's the matter with the upload?
Just give it a second.
I thought you guys would have better bandwidth in the future.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6.
You gotta be kidding me!
5, 4, 3,
Come on, load!
2.
Yes! Fuck yeah, we made it! Woo!
And there it goes.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Catherine? Catherine?
I'm here.
What the hell happened? What went wrong?
Nothing. They're out there, among the stars. We're here.
No. We were getting on the Ark. I saw it. It finished loading just before it launched.
Yeah, I saw.
Then why are we still here?
Simon, I can't keep telling you how it works. You won't listen. You know why we're here. You were copied onto the Ark. You just didn't carry over. You lost the coin toss. We both did. Just like Simon at Omicron, just like the man who died in Toronto 100 years ago.
No, this is bullshit. We came all this way. We launched the Ark.
I know it sucks, but our copies are up there. Catherine and Simon are both safe on the Ark. Be happy for them.
Are you crazy? We're gonna die down here with those fuckers living at large on a spaceship. They're not us. They're not us.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Simon. I'm proud of what we did. We made sure that something of the hundreds of thousands of years of human history survives, that something lives on.
Fuck this! Fuck this! Fuck you! Fuck you, Catherine, you lied! And I believed in you, I trusted you! You said we're getting on the fucking Ark!
We are on the Ark, you idiot! I didn't lie! I can't be responsible for your goddamn ignorance! You
Fuck! Catherine? Please don't leave me alone. Catherine? Catherine?
That's exactly why I end every, conscious person I find in the game. Because eventually, my thought process is that every person who is inhabiting some robo-suit or something in the game, up to this point, will inhabit that thing, and they will eventually figure out that they're trapped. They will eventually figure out that they are the one that is not on the Ark. They're in a false reality that they can't hope to live effectively in, and that's it. Right? This is kind of the biggest thing. This is part of the reason why I love SOMA's sort of overarching, like I was talking about earlier, about the sort of copy and paste nature of sort of how our different versions of ourselves work, right? Having the entire game be sort of built around these three major moments where you have Simon transferring from the real Simon to the first suit, and he jumps into Pathos 2 into the situation, then jumping from Pathos, that suit version, into the dive suit version, and him having to deal with the fact that, now he's aware of how it works, but he doesn't really want to accept it. So he just he has the option to turn that other Simon off. Now he's in a state where he cannot turn himself off, right? Oh, Mick Gordon worked on the music for the trailer. That's kind of cool. All hail Mick. But, so anyway, the thing that I love about this game is how it slowly amps up that point that you get throughout the game, and upon replaying it, you can see the little details that lead up to each point, and sort of how Simon his ignorance sort of grows as well as his knowledge grows throughout the game, right? Like in the beginning, he is completely ignorant to what's going on during the first copy and paste, right? But in the second copy and paste, he's aware of it after the second Simon starts, saying, hey, stuff didn't work, blah, 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 but then he realizes we have two Simons now. And then he has to deal with that, as we sort of, he has to deal with that as he moves up to the space gun and we launch the Ark. And then this is him breaking and realizing that, this whole time, you don't care. There's always, this is not a coin toss of which one, this is not a coin toss so much as there's always a guaranteed loser and there is always a guaranteed winner. Someone always survives and someone is always left behind. And I think that's sort of part of the interesting part of this whole story, is that idea of your consciousness being copied, but there's always a part of you that lingers in the past and is sort of stuck in that situation, as opposed to, this sort of paradise that's been designed for us to experience as sort of copies of ourselves, And maybe this version of Simon will never have to come to terms with the fact that all this is going on, but Catherine knew the entire time how this works. And, I think the most interesting question isn't even really how humanity survives on the satellite in space. It's more like, what happens to those previous versions of ourselves? I think more interesting questions come from what happens to the previous versions of ourselves if we don't do A or B, right? As opposed to these versions that always progress to this next stage of existence, right? And I think that just provides so many interesting questions between, what would have happened to Catherine and, what would have happened to Catherine and, I keep wanting to say Jason. No, it's Simon. Like, it's such an interesting question to think of what would happen to them if they, like, what would happen to, like, kind of how it was an interesting situation to see the original Simon, how he dealt with his diagnosis and how he was going to die, right? And his kind of acceptance of it. Then you have, well, now I just realized there's an interesting inverse to the Simon that progresses and the Simon that doesn't each time we make the copy, right? Because Simon 1, after the copy, he carries on with his life feeling rejuvenated about life, but then when he has to confront that he is going to die, he kind of accepts it as his purpose has become something greater, right? Then you have the Simon 2, after his copy into Simon 3, Simon 2 is sort of questioning, did something go wrong? He's just sort of in this neutral state of, like, what's going on? And then we have the option to let him continue to exist or turn himself off to delete that save, pretty much, right? And then when Simon 3 transfers over, or copies and pastes, but doesn't, like, but then realizes that, oh, he's the one that's left behind, we get that perspective for the first time in the game. And we get him directly freaking out over it as he's firmly in denial over what happens and hates the fact that this is what he's sort of doomed to, right? But on the inverse, you have this sort of joyous progression as it goes on, right? That it sort of starts in fear, right? Like Simon 2 begins with fear, not understanding what's going on. Simon 3 begins with apprehension of what happened with the Simons, but he's prepared to move on and work towards the Ark going into space. And then Simon 4, this one, in the Ark, makes it to that paradise. And so there's that weird juxtaposition between each version of Simon at each point during the copy and paste periods, or copy and paste sort of checkpoints, right? It's just there's so much to talk about in terms of what happens, like, after each copy and paste, right? You know, like, what would have happened to Simon 2 if we left him alone and alive and, like, functioning, right? Like, what would he do? Because he can't progress because there's no dive suits left. So what would he do? Would he go back? Would he just give up and delete himself? Like, would he continue to survive and thrive and just try to power himself somehow? Would the WoW eventually, like, suck him up and absorb him or something? Would he try to make contact with us and do something? You know, would he try to go to the surface? Like, what would he do? Right? He's a robot body, right? He doesn't need oxygen. He doesn't need food. He just needs power, right? So, would he try to construct something down there where he could exist on his own, you know? Like, would he try to make peace with the other machines or something? Would he try to join the WoW and help it understand humanity in some way? You know, like, there are all these questions of what would that Simon do, right? And now we think about, like, Simon 3 being left down there with Catherine, right? If Catherine and Simon didn't have that sort of short circuit moment, what would the two of them do when they're down there, right? Like, would Simon would probably have to get over the fact that, you know, they're stuck there, but they launched the Ark, they continued. He'd have to find solace in that somehow, right? And if Catherine didn't short circuit, what would the two of them do? Would they willingly shut themselves off because the goal's completed, they have nothing really to do besides, you know, just try to keep their digital existence going? You know, would they try to transfer Catherine into a body of her own so she could have her own sort of existence? You know, or would there be a thing, right, where they take Simon and then copy her from the Omni tool into the body of Simon 2, and then they both just kind of hang out forever in the ocean? Like, it's interesting to talk about, like, what happens. But anyway, like, I've been talking and ranting, so let's go through this questionnaire once more. Calibration Survey, Volume 3. If you're reading this, you have successfully entered the Ark. This survey is designed to give the developers a better understanding of your subjective experience and how to improve your well-being. Please continue with the survey. How would you describe your physical condition? I guess in this state, I would say I would feel normal, but there is a part of me that feels like you would be invigorated because you were not feeling like yourself, because you look down, you see a robot the whole time. So this probably feels like, it probably feels like a new life in a way. You know, so you'd feel like a new you. How would you describe your mental condition? I feel like in this version you would feel normal because you went through everything you went through, but you're here. So you feel like you've returned to the present, given the environment and the way the simulation is said to work, where it sort of simulates everything that you would experience as a person in this environment, you know? How would you describe your senses? I feel like it would be number 2, just because, again, you after not having some senses, but now you're in a simulation that has, like, the power to make those senses more functional, I feel like you'd be more aware of them this time around after everything Simon's gone through. How would you describe the sensation of your new condition? I mean, I would say it's pleasant at this point, just because it is pleasant and we know we did it, so we can exist for a long time. Given the fact that we're probably going to be immortal and we'll eventually have to deal with power, like, decreasing at some point eventually. I don't know if there's like a end point for how long the satellite will exist in space before it either falls apart or it gets destroyed by something. I don't know, but either way, I imagine that it would be pleasant up until that point. So, I don't know. I feel like it would be pleasant for now, but when that realization of eventual death comes, I imagine it would be disheartening, but given how much time we're going to have to chill out here, this is basically paradise, so I'd say it's pleasant. Are you troubled by the fact that you are no longer strictly human? I would say... I'd say somewhat, just because... Actually, now I'm kind of torn. I'd say somewhat because I would feel like we lost that human kind of element of, you know, like, what you can truly experience in the human form as a human, right? Not as a consciousness of a human. So I'd probably say I mourn my previous existence. Alright, how do you perceive your new existence? It's a direct continuation, like a new chapter. It's like being born all over again. It's something completely different and has nothing to do. I'd probably say it's like a new chapter, because it is different from what happened before, right? Like this, I'm trying to think of it from this Simon's perspective, right? So from this Simon's perspective, he kind of he has his human life, right? And then he has his entire robot existence from waking up in Pathos 2 to copying over to the Ark. And then this version of him is sort of going back to humanity in a better world, so to speak, in sort of giant air quotes. So I imagine this would be like a new chapter rather than a continuation, and I wouldn't consider it being born again in a way, because, you know, we kind of went through all of this stuff, and we should understand the concepts of how this works at this point. Do you think this new existence will be a life worth living? I would say yes, with less meaning, just because we don't really create any tangible thing in the real world, right? You know, and I don't think we have any capabilities to do what the WoW does and create growths and things that will do shit for us. So I imagine this will be a yes, but with less meaning. It's like, we'll enjoy this. It's basically, you'll enjoy the afterlife and this simulation until we run out of power, whenever that comes. Now, I imagine there might be an element of this where you can just sort of end your own program. Like, not the WoW itself, but you can kind of commit suicide at some point if you just can't handle it. So maybe that's a way out. But I would say that this would be a life worth living in this simulation until it goes broke. But it is sort of a thing where, you know, once this goes broke, that's it. There's no continuity after that. Everyone in the Ark will stay in the Ark, no matter if we create new human, like, AI hybrids in the future, you know? And this is the weird thing, too, is, like, thinking about this as a parent, it just makes you think of, like, imagine if, you know, like, I imagine my son, right? And I imagine my son, the way he is, the way he interacts with me and the world around us, right? And I imagine, like, imagine trying to copy that behavior as a computer, and as a computer program that feels real, looks real, acts real, but you know the baseline of it is not real. You know, that kind of thing, like, fucks with me thinking about. And, you know, it's a weird thing in this way too, because this game makes me treasure life in a more sort of tangible, physical way. Knowing that simulations are coming in the near future, right? Like proper simulations, you know, with the AI and everything and the way technology is going, we're eventually going to reach that point where it is kind of a simulation of some degree, right? Whether it's like the Matrix, where we're just fleshy beings being kept alive in a simulation, or whether it's like this, where we go completely digital. You know, there is that sort of thing where I feel like I would miss that physical nature of being human, where you can You know, even though you feel like you feel it, but you don't really feel it, you know, because you know it's fake. And it's like, that'd be hard, you know, to think about, you know, like every time I pick up my son and I hold him and I see him smiling at me and I feel his little head like rest on my shoulder. Having to think about that being fake would just depress the shit out of me. But again, it's like one of those things where like this existence would be fun. I feel like it would be fun, but there would be less meaning because we would lack those sort of interactions with things that we subconsciously know they aren't real, but we treat them as real for our own sort of sanity. But the truth is there. And whether we decide to accept it or not is sort of up to each individual. I'm going hoarse talking about this. Ugh. Would you rather be removed from the project and accept death? I'm going to say maybe. That's a hard maybe. I don't think you can say yes or no at this point. I think you should always keep the door open. Not necessarily in terms of just suicide, but in terms of just being like, if I want out, I want to know the option is there. It's very peaceful. This makes me want to go on a walk in the woods. Ironically, it makes me want to play Skyrim. It makes me want to play Skyrim and just chill out in Riverwood or one of the little villages that has a river. There we are.
Catherine?
That is our paradise.
I can't believe we actually made it.
Well, we did.
I'm so relieved.
It's okay, Simon. Everything's all right now.
This is part of the reason I love this ending is because you get to see kind of both. You get to see three different perspectives, right? You get the perspective of those trapped in the past that cannot move forward. You see you see the view of those who can move forward and enjoy the existence that they will have, and then you see the reality of the situation that hit mankind, right? Like just the earth scorched and just doomed. But this little vessel of hope floating in space, running off of solar power for thousands of years, is sort of the best shot we got. And like Lindwall said, you know, this is second best, but it's better than nothing, you know? And just thinking about that is... Oh, it's so... Oh, I fucking love this game. Ironically enough, I feel like this game... It's one of those things where I've played the game in both the regular mode with the enemies and in the safe mode where it's more heavy on the story. And I feel like the game actually is better in the safe mode. It's one of those weird times where I feel like the game is better where you get to see the monsters, but you don't actually have to deal with them mechanically. Because knowing that there are sort of recopied versions of life that's gone insane or has been fucked up for whatever reason, I feel like that kind of drags the game down and gets in the way of the story being what it is, right? Like I feel like the mechanics of the monsters and the horror of it, like the horror with the enemies, I feel like that does kind of detract from the game in a way, and that's probably the biggest negative. Because it's moments of, okay, you're playing a horror game. Here's you playing a horror game, right? And it's that weird sort of thing. Damn, I love this game. I love the story of this game so damn much. It's so interesting to talk about. It's so interesting to think about, and it's one of the few games I've played that has left like an emotional impact on me, right? Because it's made me. Ironically, it's made me feel more human, if you know what I mean. Like accepting things in real life, and accepting shifts in your reality in real life. Like this game's made me feel more human because of everything I've experienced while playing it. And it's a shame that at the time that I'm doing this there was nobody in chat. Big sad. But just thinking over everything that this game kind of has within it, as well as the questions you take away from it, I think is the best part of it. Like I think the best part of this game is the questions it asks, the answers it suggests, and the open to interpretation nature it is, given the way the endings are sort of sequenced, right? Because you have the sort of sad ending with Simon 3 and Catherine, I guess 2, and they're trapped, right? And Catherine short circuits, and I assume she's gone. That's it. She can't continue from that. And Simon's just alone in the depths, knowing that they succeeded, but knowing he can't continue. So what do you do? right? So that's the ending that puts you in a bad state of mind. Then you get the credits, right? When you think the game's over, then you get the hopeful ending where they're on the ark. They succeeded. They've done it. They get to live their paradise now. But in the back of their minds, there's always that little feeling, that little nagging thought of, this isn't actually real. And even if we do find some way to create new life forms and repopulate in the simulation, those aren't real either. And there's that looming sort of thought in the back of your head that it's not real, right? And that this isn't the real you. And that this isn't the human you. This isn't the human, like, Catherine. This isn't the human crew. This isn't the human versions of, like, children that you would have had if you actually did get together and have children and propagate and all this. There's so many interesting questions in this game, and it's fucking brilliant. It's just fucking brilliant, and it's and ironic. And I think the biggest irony of the game, that's kind of a positive irony, is that it's a game questioning humanity and your consciousness and what that means in relation to each other, right? But it's a game that I feel like would make... I feel like SOMA is a game that breaks people down to two sort of thought processes, I guess, after you finish the game, right? Because on the one hand, you have people that start diving into the simulation theory and all that other stuff of, like, life's a reality, so if it is a simulation, how can I fuck with it? Or if it's a simulation, then I'm not real, I'm not like a real... all this other shit, right? But then on the other side of it, you have people that really, like, that I feel like I'm on, where it's, you sort of learn to cherish humanity in a deeper respect when you think about the concept of us going digital at some point in the future. And how important that human experience is when you can, when you can go outside and feel the sun on your face, when you run your hand, like, under the water, when someone you love hugs you, when you get, when you I always come back to, like, my son, right? Because he's sort of like, I've never felt as human as I ever was. How do I say this? I've never felt more human than the first time than the time I saw my son be born, and the time that I first held him. And every time I hold him, I feel that humanity again. It's like every time and I feel like humans need that interaction with each other, where when we have those moments of being human and being compassionate and tender and loving towards each other, I feel like is when we feel the most human. And it's that sort of thing where, because of that connection you have with another human, that sort of transcends, like, your senses. It's like your consciousness. It's sort of like where your consciousness and your physicality reach their highest point of connection between the two, right? When you are, like, for me, it's that moment, like, when I hold my child, and when he, like, rests his head on me, that's my absolute peak of what it feels like to me to be human, and have that little human be with me and need me and love me and trust me, and that sort of reciprocal feeling of, like, we're here together, and I want to cherish every, like, moment of those things. Like, I feel like this game asks questions that, depending on your personal outlook, affects the way you look at humanity, right? And because I am religious, because I believe there is an afterlife, because I believe there is a God, because I believe that there is a better purpose after death, I feel like this game just influences me to be more thankful of the human experience in general on this earth, and it's the thing where I feel like this game could leave you with a lot of questions that make you feel uncomfortable, but on the other hand, it could leave you with a bunch of questions that make you feel interested to see the answers to, without breaking your own sort of, like, philosophy in a way. It's just interesting. And it's very fitting that Catherine's face is put up here, because she's sort of the most pivotal character in this story. You know, and I'd say probably one of, if not the most interesting. Simon Jarrett has the most interesting story in the game, like in terms of what actually happens to him. But in terms of like someone I'd like to have a conversation with about after the whole process, like if I was in the Ark and I had to sit down with anybody in the game, I'd sit down with Simon, but I would really want to sit down with Catherine and just have a discussion about just everything, just because of how like interesting this shit is.